Welcome back to our channel, where we dive deep into the heart-stopping drama of Genoa City. Today is a beautiful day to unravel the tangled webs of love, deception, and paranoia that keep us all on the edge of our seats. Let us explore the latest explosive developments surrounding the Abbott family. The atmosphere within the sprawling Abbott mansion has shifted from its usual bustling warmth to a chilling, suffocating silence. The grandeur of the estate now feels like a gilded cage, echoing with the agonizing absence of Diane Jenkins Abbott. For the past 48 hours, a heavy blanket of dread has settled over the family, transforming the normally confident Abbott men into restless, terrified shadows pacing the hardwood floors. The sheer weight of Diane's sudden and complete vanishing act is beginning to fracture the fragile peace they had fought so fiercely to build, replacing it with a creeping, insidious paranoia that threatens to consume them all. Kyle Abbott is the first to truly sound the alarm, his protective instincts flaring into full-blown panic. He has meticulously tracked his mother's lack of movement, noting with growing horror that she has not set foot in the chapel offices for 2 entire days. Even more disturbing to the young executive is the state of her bedroom at the mansion, which remains perfectly untouched, the bed and slept in, devoid of any sign that Diane has been home. Kyle is a man who carries the deep, unhealed trauma of his mother's past fake death, and this sudden, unexplained absence triggers every very fear within his psyche. He cannot simply brush this off as a temporary retreat. His mind immediately races toward the darkest, most terrifying conclusions imaginable. Driven by this escalating terror, Kyle brings his grim observations directly to his father, shattering Jack Abbott's precarious focus on corporate matters and family legacy. Jack is initially resistant, desperately wanting to believe that Diane simply needed a few days of space to clear her head following their recent emotional turbulence. However, as Kyle lays out the undeniable timeline of her absence, the patriarch's denial crumbles, replaced by cold, visceral shock. Jack transitions in an instant from a composed CEO to a frantic, terrified husband, the realization washing over him that the woman he loves has vanished without a single trace, leaving behind a void that feels entirely unnatural and deeply ominous. Just as the panic begins to solidify into a desperate action plan, a delivery arrives at the Abbott mansion that sends the situation spiraling into absolute chaos. A courier drops off a package directed specifically to Jack, containing a vibrant, elaborate floral arrangement. Under normal circumstances, such a delivery would be a mundane occurrence, but in the highly charged, fearful atmosphere of the missing matriarch, the flowers feel less like a gift and more like a sinister calling card. Jack stares at the arrangement with a mixture of confusion and mounting dread, his instincts screaming that this unexpected arrival is intimately connected to the nightmare unfolding around him. With trembling hands, Jack tears open the accompanying envelope to reveal a cryptic, deeply unsettling note from none other than Patty Williams. The message is carefully crafted, stating that she intends to keep her distance until Jack decides to reach out, but concluding with the chilling hope that he will have a reason to contact her very soon. Jack reads the words over and over, his eyes scanning the ink as if trying to decipher a hidden, malicious code. Every syllable feels laced with venom, a psychological taunt designed to push him over the edge of reason. He projects his deepest, most profound fears onto this ambiguous message, viewing it not as a simple pleasantry, but as a direct, terrifying threat. In Jack's frantic, terrified mind, the dots connect with terrifying speed and flawed logic. He immediately assumes the absolute worst, his paranoia taking full control of his reasoning faculties. He is convinced that this floral arrangement is Patty's twisted way of announcing her victory, a sick celebration of having successfully removed Diane from the chessboard. The phrase hoping he has a reason to reach out soon echoes in his mind as a ransom demand, a subtle confirmation that Patty is holding the keys to Diane's safe return. Jack's imagination runs wild, painting horrifying pictures of Patty orchestrating a malicious kidnapping to clear the path for her own delusional romantic fantasies. This terrifying theory is heavily fueled by Jack's extensive, traumatic history with Patty Williams. He vividly remembers the horrifying yacht incident, the psychological manipulation, and the sheer lengths Patty has gone to in the past to insert herself into his life. He recalls how Victor Newman recently weaponized Patty's instability to drive a wedge between him and Diane, making the idea of another coordinated attack seem entirely plausible. Jack convinces himself that Patty, perhaps acting alone or perhaps as a pawn in a larger, more sinister game, has taken Diane captive, using her as the ultimate leverage to force Jack back into her twisted orbit. Kyle and Jack quickly form a desperate war council, their shared terror forging a dangerous, hyper-focused alliance. They debate the possibility of Victor Newman's involvement, acknowledging the Newman patriarch's history of utilizing Patty for his own destructive ends. However, the sheer audacity of the floral delivery keeps their primary focus locked firmly on Patty. The generational trauma of the Abbott family being targeted by outside forces rears its ugly head, convincing both father and son that they are once again under siege. They prepare to go to war, their absolute certainty in Patty's guilt blinding them to any other rational explanation for Diane's sudden disappearance. Fueled by a volatile mixture of profound love for his wife and blinding, unadulterated rage, Jack embarks on a frantic hunt to track down Patty Williams. The physical toll of this desperation is evident in his tense posture, his clenched fists, and the wild, dangerous glint in his eyes. He is a man pushed to the absolute brink, willing to tear Genoa City apart brick by brick to secure Diane's safe return. When he finally locates Patty, the atmosphere crackles with a lethal intensity. Jack corners the woman he believes to be a monster, trapping her in a confrontation that is destined to be explosive, completely disregarding any potential consequences of his aggressive actions. The confrontation is a masterclass in raw, unbridled fury, as Jack unleashes decades of pent-up resentment and current, visceral terror upon Patty. He aggressively demands to know his wife's exact whereabouts, his voice a thunderous roar of accusations and threats. He paints Patty as the ultimate villain, refusing to entertain even a fraction of a doubt regarding her guilt. He throws her extensive criminal record and history of severe psychiatric instability in her face, weaponizing her past sins to justify his current, aggressive interrogation. Jack is entirely consumed by the narrative he has constructed in his mind, deaf to any protests or denials Patty might attempt to offer in her defense. Patty's reaction to this explosive ambush is a complex tapestry of confusion, twisted amusement, and perhaps a glimmer of genuine, tragic hurt. The profound irony of the situation is that, in this specific instance, Patty might actually be entirely innocent of the heinous crime Jack is accusing her of. Yet, her past actions have forever condemned her to be the eternal suspect, the default scapegoat for any tragedy that befalls the Abbott family. The complex psychology of a woman who may have simply wanted to send a cryptic floral arrangement, only to find herself aggressively accused of a federal felony, adds a layer of dark, tragic irony to the unfolding drama. However, the most heartbreaking aspect of this entire chaotic ordeal is the tragic reality of Diane's actual location and state of mind. Diane is not bound in a damp basement, nor is she being held captive by a cackling villain. She is trapped in the suffocating, inescapable prison of her own mind. She is hiding in a self-imposed exile, holed up in a dark, lonely hotel room, paralyzed by a profound emotional despair that is far more terrifying than any physical kidnapping. Her disappearance is a direct result of a catastrophic psychological break, driven by insecurities and nightmares that have completely shattered her sense of reality and her belief in Jack's love. Diane's descent into this self-imposed isolation was catalyzed by a horrific, visceral nightmare that felt entirely too real. In the dark recesses of her sleep, she envisioned Jack completely abandoning her, choosing instead to move Patty Williams into the Abbott mansion. The nightmare escalated into pure psychological torture as she dreamed that Patty had not actually miscarried decades ago, but rather that their long-lost daughter had survived, creating a perfect, unbreakable family unit that entirely excluded Diane. The final, crushing blow of the dream was Jack bidding Diane a cold, cruel farewell, a rejection so profound that it bled into her waking hours, leaving her emotionally paralyzed and utterly convinced of her impending doom. Desperate for reassurance and fighting against the suffocating weight of this nightmare, Diane had reached out to Jack in a moment of extreme, naked vulnerability. She left him a deeply emotional voicemail, pouring her heart out into the digital void, expressing her absolute willingness to try again and fight for their marriage. She laid her soul bare, offering complete reconciliation and begging for a sign that he still wanted her. But tragically, through a cruel twist of fate, a technological glitch, or simple human error amidst the chaos of his corporate life, Jack completely missed the message. He never heard her desperate plea, leaving her words hanging unanswered in the silence. To Diane, this digital silence was not an accident. It was a definitive, cruel, and intentional rejection. Sitting in her isolated room, watching the hours tick by without a single response from the man she loves, she interprets his lack of communication as the ultimate confirmation of her darkest fears. She believes with every fiber of her being that Jack received her message, listened to her vulnerable plea, and actively chose to ignore it because he has given up on their marriage. The agonizing pain of feeling entirely unwanted and discarded by the man she sacrificed everything for is the true captor keeping her hidden from the world. It is utterly heartbreaking to witness how simple, tragic miscommunications can completely shatter profound relationships. The agonizing vulnerability of reaching out, of leaving a piece of your soul in a digital voicemail, only to be met with deafening, endless silence, is a pain that resonates on a deeply human level. It evokes a profound, universal empathy for Diane's crushing despair. We have all felt the suffocating weight of an unanswered plea, the terrifying way that silence breeds insecurities and feeds our darkest, most irrational nightmares. It is a poignant, painful reminder that love requires constant, clear validation, lest the creeping shadows of doubt consume it entirely, turning lovers into strangers separated by a chasm of unspoken words. Now, Genoa City braces for the inevitable, explosive collision of these two false realities. Will Jack discover the unheard voicemail and realize the tragic truth of his wife's despair before he does irreparable, catastrophic damage to his own psyche and his highly volatile dynamic with Patty Williams? Will Diane find the strength to emerge from the shadows of her self-imposed exile, or will her heartbreaking assumption of Jack's rejection push her further into the abyss, causing her to vanish forever? The clock is ticking mercilessly on the Abbott marriage, and every passing second of silence brings them closer to a point of no return, leaving us desperate to see who will finally break the silence and save this fractured family.